Hello, welcome in or welcome back to my channel. Or welcome to my channel. I mean, if you've never been here, sorry, I'm so scatterbrained. I know. If y'all been around long enough, you already know. That's no secret. If you've never been here, I appreciate you coming in. This is actually take two for you guys. Behind the scenes, it's actually like take 4 or 5. It's a hard one to talk about, but those of you coming back are probably like, yeah, we already did this one. We did and we didn't. I tried to do this the first time, and it's a hard one to talk about. I came on and I thought I was going to do it. I have been praying about it. I talked to the Lord about it, and He's like, "You can do it. Just speak." That's all He's ever wanted me to do is just speak. And that sounds so simple, but that goes along with surrendering everything I feel about that in order to do that. And here I am. I appreciate you guys for allowing me to feel like I can come up and do a take two. I broke down in the first one for those of you just joining in. Uh, and once the tears started, usually, I get emotional up here. It's an emotional journey, good, bad, the joy, the peace, the unsure parts. It's a journey, and once you go and fully surrender to God, and you know what that means, every moment after that is an emotional journey. So it gets a little emotional around here, but I'm usually able to pause and reel it back in. And that night, I think just the awareness of the things that the Lord wants me to say came very forefront, and I just felt like everybody was watching me, and it's crazy because you guys cannot see me. But that is just how it felt at the time. And once the tears started, I was not able to stop them. And Reverend Dream came up and he sat with me and he changed everything. I was able to calm down, and I was able to say some of the things that were really hard for me to say, just because I know how it all sounds to a lot of people. So it's hard working through that, and again, it's part of surrendering all of that and still doing it. And I think that's so important for you to know and for me to know, is that we are doing it anyways, and that's what He sees. That I'm back up here because as much as I talked about in that video, I did not get to talk about a lot of the main things that I feel like God wanted me to talk about. And that's just, as much as I sit up here from my perspective and give my journey and we talk about my surrender, it was not just me about my surrender in this journey. It was really about me and my husband surrendering at that point. And yeah, I think it's incredibly important to talk about. Uh, not so much his perspective, but that he was there in the conversations we had and everything that I had to get him to see, that the Lord had gotten me to see at that point. And yeah, I think it's incredibly important to talk about. And I know why God wants me to talk about it, because it is important. That night, the fear and the doubt and everything just got the best of me. But I appreciate everybody that was in those comments. I kind of want to go through them real quick because they were just amazing. And the people that were there: Repent, Mr. Martinez, Fever Dream, Carl, Star was there, Candace was there. You guys all said so many amazing things. Uptown Chrissy Brown, I did read that comment. She said, "I've been listening, and I want to say, Shades of Gray, those you have, those of you that have a fruitful womb are to put babies in the arms of those wombs who are barren." And I think about that all the time, and I appreciate that. That was such a gift for me to go back and read that, because I think about that from that standpoint all the time, and I think about the Hannahs and the Sarahs, and And it brings me comfort, and I appreciate that so much. There was just, and consume the goodness. Arlene was there, Bugman was there, and I seen in the comments that you were going through your own loss, and that takes surrendering all of the feelings and giving those to God. And my heart is with you, so with you. Scratch and Pete was there, just Jason, all of you. I appreciate sweet Melissa was there. I don't get a lot of time, and I don't remember to look up at the comments a lot of the times, but I do go back and I read them, and I'm so appreciative of them. And I just thank you guys for being there that night. It was out of the blue and it came out of nowhere. And as much as I feel like I let God down, I felt God there that night through all of you, through the whole experience. And I very much believe that's another reason why I feel like, I need to come up here and complete this for him and just get it out and move on. So thank you for being here. But I want to go back because, the topic that we're talking about tonight challenges all of us, surrendering our plans, desires, fears to trust fully in God's plan for our lives. Surrender is not easy, no matter what that looks like to you. And as I talk about this, as I lay out my journey, as I go through the steps of where I've been and what I've done and what God told me, I think he wants you to sit and ask yourselves, how can I apply these steps to my life? What does surrender look like in my life? What does God calling out to me look like in my life? What does my resistance look like? What does all of this look like? And how can you apply it to you so that way you can take that step closer and have that closer relationship with God? So keep that in mind as we, as you're looking at any of my videos, as you're listening into any of my stories. The main question is, what does it all look like for you so that you can start to understand, so you can take your next step? Or for you guys out there that are so wonderfully walking in your journey. And I'm not saying that's not without struggle, but as a refresher, as confirmation, as you are walking in this journey, you are surrendering, you are giving it all to God. And it's not easy. So if that's you, I'm so happy for you. And I'm on my way. And those people can tell you it takes a lot of surrendering and giving it all to God. Now, if you're like me, I used to cringe at people that would say, give it to God. Because for me, I'm a very, lay everything out for me. And I'm that way with God. And I'm learning that, how dare I don't have any, I have no position to be like that. With God, if you want me to go from point A to point B, you're going to have to tell me what point B is. And a part of surrendering is walking towards point B and having no idea what it is, and laying down everything it takes to be able to do that. That is surrendering. And you have to think about your heart's desires and everything that's accounted in that. So that's what I want you to think of. This is just mine. This is just my journey and what I had to do to get closer to him, to fully trust him, to fully understand who he is. Surrender is not easy. It's really comfortable or convenient. But when we do it, we step into the fullness of what God has for us. And sometimes he asks us to lay down the things we hold most tightly. Not that he wants to take them from us, but to show us that his plans are so much greater than ours. So I'm going to take you back to my moment of surrender, and when I say I surrendered fully to him. I became very aware that his plan was the only plan. Throughout that whole 7 months, everything that we had gone through, did I need it? Yeah, and he knows that. That's why it happened. But when I surrendered to him, it was me saying yes to him. That doesn't mean I automatically put that in action. That's not that sometimes all he wants you to do in the moment is fully surrender and experience that. And the rest will come later. But for 7 months, I wrestled with God's plan for me and my son. Adoption was never the plan. Never. No matter how incapable I felt, adoption was never the plan for me. I couldn't wrap my head around it, and that goes to play of when I tried taking things into my own plans, my human self. There was one thing that I knew, that I was incapable of bringing him home, and that I could not give him to strangers. So in my human mind, I try to take things into my own hands, and I thank God that he stepped in, because I see it now. I see it. But at the time, I loved him. I loved him too deeply to consider letting him go to strangers, and I knew I could not do it. But as the months passed, I started to break under the weight of trying to make my plans work. I was in the mindset of, I got myself into this situation. Of course I'm going to bring him home. Like, there's no, what do you mean? I'm having a baby. I'm going to bring him home. For the situation I am in, I am married. I have 2 kids already. I am perfectly capable of taking or bringing him home. There's no reason why, when we think about all the reasons why people do place their children up for adoption, none of those reasons were really my reasons. So outward looking in, there was absolutely no reason why I wouldn't bring him home. And it's just, I have to get on board with that. I have to catch up to that. I just have to get there. And that was my mindset the whole time. But I was scared. I was scared of what would happen to me if I kept pushing against God's will. I remember sitting in that bathtub, 7 months pregnant, completely broken and exhausted. And it was just me, God, and my son in that moment. This was right after, this big explosion with my son happened, and I'm looking around the room and everybody's looking at me like I'm a monster. And I just run to the bathroom. I just that's where I am. And it's almost like autopilot. I got undressed, I started the bathtub, I got in, and I just sat in it. And like, it wasn't the same kind of things that I had just experienced in these previous months, where I can't remember, and it's scary, and I'm losing seconds, and I'm alone with my kid. Like, it wasn't like that. It was it was serenity. It was peaceful. It was warm. It was comforting. It was just a place where I felt that I could say anything and not be judged, where I could just be so honest in the moment. And I was. I poured out my fears, my doubts, and my pain to God. I talked to my son, telling him how much I loved him, how much I wanted so badly to be enough for him, for my husband, and for our family. But deep down, I knew I couldn't do it. And I couldn't do it alone. And in that moment, I realized something. God wasn't asking me to stop loving my son. He was asking me to love him enough to trust him with his future. Because when I sat in that bathtub, I just poured my heart out. Like, I love him so much. So why isn't this working? Because God and I knew that before I ever became pregnant, that I was done. And we were in alignment with that. And no matter how we got here, or whatever the situation was, it didn't change that like it does for so many. And I walked out of that bathroom and sat down with my husband for one of the hardest conversations of my life. I was completely honest. I told him I was breaking and that I was scared of becoming someone I wouldn't recognize if I kept fighting this. I shared how God had been pressing on my heart to surrender, and I told him I couldn't do this without trusting God's plan. And, early on, because I talk about it, the moment I found out I was pregnant, it was never a happy moment. It was a very, very strong awareness of this is real and you really got yourself into this because I already knew. So having to, like I said, when I was in that bathtub, I surrendered completely to him. And I knew that what he was telling me, that first step was to go out and have that conversation with my husband. And after we had that conversation and we were done, which I'll get into here in a second, um, it's just emotional. But I came out and I had that conversation with him. And, for all the things that have happened, I hadn't gone to the OB at this point. I thought I was maybe 5.5, 6 months pregnant, because I hadn't gone yet. And it wasn't for lack of trying. My husband had tried to get me to go, but how's he gonna? And it came down to the point, you need to call at least the OB and go see the OB. And if you don't, I'm gonna have to physically put you in this car the best way I can and take you to go because I wasn't going. I wasn't leaving the house at this point. Um, but even when I did, and I did, because I think we were just both really scared at that point, and um, at that point, I knew that I can't bring him home. As hard as that is, I can't bring him home. But when I did call the OB and I went for that first initial visit, I didn't tell her. I had every intention of going in there and telling her, God knows my heart's intentions were good. But when I got in there and she'd been my OB, we've had plenty of conversations. And she's like, oh, Ash, just like everybody else that knew me and knew I was done. Oh, what did you do? And I'm just like, I don't know. And it wasn't that she was pointing her finger. We both knew. We just knew. And she was just as shocked as I was. And, when she first mentioned adoption, all of those feelings came up, like the shame, the guilt, everything associated with it. And I immediately said, no, I got myself into this. I just need to go. I just need to figure it out and bring him home. I just need to jump on board with this. And I need to get it together. And I left. And then God's timing, though, right? Because when I left, my next step God wanted me to do was open up to a friend about it that I hadn't. I've been tucked away in my house, and they didn't even know I was pregnant. And those people led me to his parents, and they knew them, and it was so like I knew what God did in that situation. He took one of the things I was so afraid of and took it off the table for me. Because by the time I met his parents, they weren't strangers at all. But she led me there. So then when I went back to my OB and I told her, I'm on board. It was a whole thing. You can go listen to it in its entirety in my birth mom story. But I came in and, I'm like, changed my mind. And not only did I change my mind, I have these wonderful parents that I need to find, and I can't find them. I've been trying to see them, and I can't see them. And it turns out she dealt with, that's the only adoption agency that she dealt with. So she's like, do you want me to pull them up for you? And it was just that was God. All those steps right there were God just for me surrendering, not even doing anything in the moment, just looking up and saying, I give it to you. It's all yours. Take it. Just take it and get me out of this, really. And it was hard. But slowly, those were the steps. Those were me surrendering. Those were actually taking steps towards me saying, proving that, yes, it's yours, take it, I will follow you. Tell me where to go. And somehow I was just on autopilot. He came in, he stepped in, and it was like he moved my feet for me. When I, even though his parents were such a godsend and all of this was good, and he was just creating this possible situation out of this impossible situation, didn't mean that I didn't know the severity of the situation and what I was doing, that boy was still mine and all of the things that come along with that. But God just kept telling me, if you just keep going, I will give you the peace. I will remain faithful. I will show you that I can do the impossible. And he did. And it's all about surrendering everything that you feel, every human emotion that you have, every natural instinct that you have. And it's hard. So, coming out of the bathroom and trying to explain to my husband all of the things that I've been feeling and that what God has been telling me and all of my fears with it and all of it, everything, it's just like the natural instinct for him is to be like, what do I need to do better so that way you can do this? What do I need to do? I can make more, I can get another job, we can bring people in, we whatever you need to do so that way we can bring him home. And then trying to find a way to tell him and explain to him almost in the way that God had to get me to understand. And one of the things is yes, of course it's always financial, but everything that he was, stuff like that is, yeah, we could. That is possible. That's something I am capable of doing, is going out, bunkering down and making sure that we have enough to support 3 kids. Absolutely. But it wasn't about that. As much as it is, it was not about that, and he said, we can bring people in 24/7 to help you watch the kids, to help babysit, to help do all these things. And I'm just looking at him like, look at our life now. Look at all the things that we do to prevent having to do that. And I'm not, just knowing me, you could bring him in and we could try it, but it's not going to stick. Me knowing me, some things you just know about yourself. And even if we did, it's the moments, my husband's at work and they can't be here and I'm still alone with the kids. And not that I'm afraid to be alone with my kids, but something was telling me if I brought him home, things are never going to be the same in such a, not a way everybody sits there and says, well, of course things aren't going to be the same. You're bringing home another kid, your whole, they'll tell you that third one is just, it really throws things out of whack. And God was telling me it was deeper than that. This was more than those normal feelings of change and adjustment and everything that comes along with adding another life to your family. So I really had to tell him that, look at who I am. Look at who I am as a mom. And I think that's one of the things that he couldn't wrap his head around is, he's looking at me like, look at you and look at you as a mom. You do everything for your kids. You are so attentive. Those boys love you. You're just everything to them. And so in his mind, he just couldn't wrap his head around it. But at the same time, he's looking at me, looking at his wife, looking at the things that I'm telling him, looking at our life. And if I'm saying this, then maybe he needs to listen and try to understand. And I'm so thankful for that because, one of the things that I did tell him, trying to get him to understand, is is how, Andrea Yates kept flashing up, and he didn't know who she was, so I had to explain it to him. And as he's listening to me, he was there. He had seen a lot of the things. He made me aware of some of the things that I didn't know that was happening. He was the first one to see that and bring it to me and say, "What is going on with you?" And it was just such a scary time. But it's not like he couldn't didn't sit there and deny the things that we were going through. And of course, he's gonna ask the next question, like, "What are you trying to tell me?" And I'm like, "No, never that. I just think God is trying to tell me something very important through all of the things that I talk about the plagues that I feel like he brought me. All of those things that he was trying to show me was for a reason. And I feel that bringing him home is such a huge risk. And I can't ignore that. These are my kids. Even if it was just me, if it came down to me, that I feel like I'm protecting them from, sometimes, because I don't know. I could never possibly know, but I think God was just trying to tell me that the best intentions can go so horribly wrong, especially when you're going against His will. And I told him about Andrea Yates. She loved her kids. She was a doting mom. She didn't start out that way. Of course, she had a lot more going on, but her doctors were telling her that she needs to stop. Her church and her husband was not telling her that. They weren't listening to her. And they have a very strong mentality of God will give you all the children that you can handle, and it's in God's hands, and all of these things. And my heart breaks for her, because I know, at least for me, it didn't matter what anybody was telling me, good or bad. It just came down to what my husband and that conversation, me and him. And I'm so incredibly thankful that he listened to me, because when I think about, if he hadn't, it brings me fear and anxiety and not good feelings. So it's like the night before we went to have him, and we had talked about this. This is about almost a month later, a little under a month and a half later. Because at this point, we had already met his parents. I had from the bathroom experience to up until that night before we went, like, I had all of these confirmations, God stepping in, leading me. Like, I was fully on board, no matter how much I was going to break through this, that I was going to be obedient, that I was going to follow everything, and that I was completing the mission that God was preparing me for, that He was making me strong for. Not in the way everybody else may think that, but in a way that fulfilled His plan. And He has remained so faithful through that. We'll have to do a video on just all the areas I feel like God was truly there. He was literally there. Because I can't explain how any of this was done without Him. So I was fully on board with. I had found his parents. God brought me his parents. I followed the footsteps to get everywhere, and I'm here, and I'm fully. I know this is the only plan at this point. I know this is the only option, and I know in my heart that he was never meant to be mine. He was always meant to be theirs. I know that little boy is mine. I'm not crazy, and I'm not delusional. I feel like that's what I would have been if, sometimes I feel like the monster everybody thinks that I am. After hearing me, my dad sure let me know that, and a lot of other people along this journey has let me know that. But when I think about it and I talk to God about it, I feel like bringing him home, I would have been delusional and crazy, and the monster that everybody thinks that that I am now. I think I would have been all of those things if I would have brought him home. I've been very selfish. And in the version of whatever that would have meant for me. You know what I mean? Um, so when my husband asked me the night before if we were, if I was still sure, and by then I knew fully. I was very aware of what God was trying to tell me and show me. And I thought about it for a second, and I thought about everything, and I was just very honest with him. And I said, when I think about bringing him home and all the things that come along with it, you know, feeding, bathing, clothing, changing, get him out of the crib, like just all the things that just naturally come along with bringing another life into this world. It wasn't there. The want to do it wasn't there. And I know that sounds horrible, but you have to understand, I spent 7 months trying to get that want to come, to get it to turn on, to just, I would pray to God to just put it in me, just put that in me instead, and all of this will go away. Um, and sitting here admitting that as a mom, as a person, as somebody that has to fit into a society that thinks that the way that they do is incredibly hard to admit. Um, mm. But when I thought about what God did for me and the fact that I didn't have to worry about bringing him home, that God sent his parents to me, he sent me my way out. He sent a way for this all to work out just perfectly. And the peace that I feel in knowing that I don't have to bring him home and try to figure it out. That I don't have to take this huge, huge risk. And I know it sounds horrible, but I hope that somebody out there, you guys out there, hear the severity of my words and the weight of them. And how dangerous that is in itself to not have that in you. No matter how much you want it, no matter how much you try to force it, no matter what. If you're feeling those feelings and you're just sitting there, my plate is so full, I cannot add anymore. In understanding the words that you're saying and how that could be perceived and how all of these things, like, I didn't need anybody to tell me any of the things that they did tell me, because I felt that myself. No matter how right this was, no matter how God was bringing me there, I still felt things, and I heard what I was saying, and I felt like a monster. I didn't need anybody to tell me, but that's a part of putting that down and surrendering and still taking those steps and following through. And it's extremely hard, no matter what that looks like for you. So, yeah, I told him the amount of peace and warmth and just thankfulness. And I have so much joy in my heart for God taking this impossible situation and making it possible. I didn't see any way out. It was hard. Yeah. And that's how I know. And that's what I told him. That's how I know. That's how I know that this is right. This is, no matter how I feel, no matter what it's going to do, no matter what, I know this is right. So then when we got to the hospital the next morning, we're getting ready to go in, and I mentioned this too, but again, that act of continually surrendering, we're waiting to go have him, and my husband looks at me and he says, I don't think I can do this. And I can't express the amount of fear I had when he said that without feeling so much shame, because I was afraid. I was so afraid when those words came out of his mouth, because at the end of the day, I knew that if he couldn't do it, we will be bringing a baby home, and whatever happens after that. And I told him that. I said, I'm so afraid. I'm so afraid, but it's just not me in this. So if you cannot do this, then we're going to have to figure something out. And that scares me so much. And I had to explain to him, kind of how much it scared me. And by the time we were done talking, he's like, Ash, I know this is right, but I love him so much. And he was, and I told him no. And I understand, because I love him so much, but it's just not enough. What God is telling me is just not enough. It's not going to be enough to get him by, to get us by, to get us through this. And I knew that so fully by then. And in the end, he understood. He said, I know it's the right thing. I know this is what we should be doing. Because he's seen he was there to see everything, his parents, the whole process. He was right there alongside me the whole time from the moment I found out I was pregnant. He was there to see the bad and the good. He couldn't deny the fact that he's seen God in this. I will be honest with you. His faith and my faith are at completely different spots. But he cannot deny. And I think he's starting to fully understand himself what happened in this situation, who happened in this situation. And he knows what I'm talking about here today with you guys. And I've always said, maybe one day he will come up, and he has always been so no, because of, everything. And this morning he said, maybe one day I will have to come sit with you and we can talk about it. And that's a step. I feel like that's God. And I'm so grateful for that. And he'll get there in his own time. And if he does come up here, that would be amazing. But it's just that growth and that change and that surrender. And even after that, when I was in there after they, I had him and they were bringing him up to me, those mama bear instincts kick in so strong. I understand it. I get that's mine. I just had him, and what are you doing with him? Where's he going? I started like, no, that's my baby. Bring him here. I'm bringing him home. What am I doing? I've been crazy this whole time. And at that exact moment, I'm just like, I feel this God's hand on my shoulder. And I feel it, like there's pressure to where I look over and there's nothing there, but I felt God's hand on there. And 3 seconds is all it took for me to say, I can't do this. He's coming home. And God reminding me everything that we went through, all the conversations we had, the openness, the awareness, the honesty, the obedience. And I was reminded, and I let him go. But I stuck to the things that he was telling me and guiding me through the whole process. And I know how strong those feelings are, that he's mine. I just had him. He's my son. Of course, I'm going to bring him home. And I had to shove that down in those moments. And there are very, very strong reasons to why I, proceeded with the hospital stay and all the way up till now, the way I have. And it's the most unnatural thing to do. But I put that down because that's not what God was telling me to do. That's not what God is telling me. That's not how God's telling me to go about this situation. And I remain obedient to that. And every time I'm obedient to that, he is so faithful. So faithful. And we let him go. What amazes me to this day is how my husband responded. He could have said no. He could have held on to his own fears or doubts, but instead he looked at me and said, I trust you. That moment was nothing short of God's grace and working in both of us. And it was not easy. And it took a lot of God's strength, really leaning into that peace, that warmth, those steps that He wants to take. And each confirmation you got, He's seen it too. He was there, like I said. He couldn't deny it. He couldn't deny it. And we had to just put our human feelings down. We had to put it all aside. So, flash forward, and I talked about this a little bit in the first tape too, is Abraham and Isaac. I had just had this happen. I was looking for comfort in all the wrong places, as we've talked about and we've learned. So I joined, birth mom groups, Christian groups, groups that talk about situations like Andrea Yates and many other women. But not specifically just that, but places that, talk about postpartum depression, and everything was post. And, if anybody wants to say that it wasn't God, he brought me my place while I was pregnant. And the moment I surrendered in the bathtub, still fully pregnant, He took it all away. I never have seen I've never lost seconds. I've never had that happen since. I've never felt any of the things that transpired through that. The moment I surrendered to Him, it was gone. And I was still very fully pregnant. But in those groups, those are where I was finding a lot of the same feelings I was feeling. And those are the places where people could understand me the most, I feel. And again, what that does to you, the realization of that, but I feel like I needed it all, and God was showing me and confirming me and letting me know that the world may not understand, they may not get it, but He did. He got the bigger picture. He knew my heart. He understood. And He just needed to help me surrender to that. But during that time, when I started talking, and, like I said, God was just a footnote. It was just like, this happened. God was there. He saved me. Like, it wasn't even anything. I was putting my story first and putting His story in the shadows. And, that's where somebody, I wasn't even talking about Abraham or Isaac. And they were like, well, God stopped Abraham from sacrificing Isaac. Why didn't He step in for you and your son? And that threw me. That threw me through a loop, through a whole scenario, because I don't know, it wasn't like I questioned. Gosh, it was at the same time I was questioning Him. Like, I feel so right in this, Lord. We went through this. Like, I followed this. You let me know you are here with me through it. Like, I never felt more aligned in listening to God and surrendering and being obedient than what I just did. I broke. It shattered me. And not just the way I lost everybody around me. I didn't have nobody at that point. Like, I was just, when you're telling me that I got it wrong, that I read Him wrong, that I did all of these things, and I went through all of these things, and at the very last minute, I missed the vibe, I missed the feeling, I missed Him telling me to bring him home. Like, I failed, I missed it. Where did I miss it? What do you mean? And the whole time, God is just like, no, you didn't fail, you didn't, you understood, you got it, you were obedient, you were all of these things, you trusted me. And that's when I kind of, you have to grow to understand that it wasn't me that didn't get the message. It was that person that didn't quite understand the message. Because and for anybody that doesn't know, in Genesis 22, God asked Abraham to offer his beloved son as a sacrifice. It's a story that can be hard to read, but it's ultimately about trust. God was asking Abraham to surrender the thing he held most dear and to trust that God's plan was good, even when it didn't make sense. And so I want to pause here because I know that this is exactly where that person was able to say, well, God stepped in and stopped Abraham from savoring Isaac. Why didn't he step in for you and your son? And I guess that's a very valid question because I asked the same question, after they said that to me. But here's the thing that I learned and that I continue to learn. Abraham's story wasn't about sacrifice itself. It was about trust. It was about the trust. God was asking Abraham to surrender, to show that his faith wasn't in his plans, but in God's promises. For me, that's exactly what God was asking. He wasn't asking me to stop loving my son. He was asking me to love him enough to trust that his plan for both of us was way better than mine. And just like Abraham, I didn't understand it fully in the moment. I wrestled, I questioned, I fought, but ultimately I had to trust that God sees the bigger picture in a way that I could never, that I'm not supposed to. It's not my job. And I have to remind myself of that it's his job. I am just supposed to be obedient to the things that he is asking of me. The difference is that Abraham's test ended with God stepping in to provide a ram. My test ended with me stepping out in faith and saying yes to adoption. Both stories are about surrender and trust, not the outcome itself. And God has been so faithful in ways that he's shown me that his plan was the right one for me and my son. And as I share this tonight, I want to ask you, where is God asking you to lay something down so he can do his work fully? Where is he asking you to trust him completely, even when it's hard, even when it breaks you? Maybe it's a relationship, a dream, or a fear you've been holding on to. Maybe it's your plans or the way you've always thought your life should go. I have said that's the best place to start is to literally write your life and draw a line through it. And that's where God wants you to start. That is the first step of surrendering. Whatever it is, surrender is never easy, but it's where transformation truly begins. I still had a choice. I could have completely ignored everything that God was trying to tell me and show me. And I could have brought that little boy home. He did not force me. I wasn't forced. I was like, oh, I knew I could bring that little boy home. And everybody along the way made it so, so clear. Probably because of how different my story was. Probably because of the things that I was saying. But I hold steadfast because I know I followed and I know I was obedient. And he shows me that every day, every single day. And he didn't force me. He didn't tell me. He didn't look at me and say, well, you did this to yourself. And now you're asking me for help. He didn't say any of those things. He simply offered me a way out. And it was the hardest way out that I could have ever went through. But I'm sitting here right now and I love him so much more for it. I am at peace. I have so much peace in this situation. I have so much strength. I have so much faith in the future because of this surrendering and the obedience. And I feel like God took such a heartbreakingly beautiful situation and just wrapped a bow all around it. He hugged it. His hands was in it. And it's not easy. No matter what that surrender looks like in your life, you are probably sitting here thinking right now, if you do, you sit in it, you will feel it pop up. You will feel that deep down, and you will know. And you will know, and you have a choice to surrender that, or to keep walking the path that you have been on. And for the first time in my life, I decided I was going to listen. I was going to surrender. And I almost feel like he brings you to a point where you just you have will, you have a choice, but he just really, really tries to make you very aware of what you're asking. Like for me, when I was asking him, just bring it, let me do this. Let me be able to bring him home. I'm bringing him home. This isn't a question. And it's just like he had to really look at me and say, do you understand what you are asking of me? Do you understand what this means? Because I will give it to you if that's what you want. But I'm telling you right now, I have a plan for you, and it's what you need. And that's hard. That's hard when it goes against everything that you are. And it doesn't have to be a story like mine or a situation like mine, but you have that in your life right now, in your journey, where there are things that you have to surrender. There are things that you need to give up, not because he's telling you, not because he's forcing you, because he's making you aware of them. And it's still your choice and your decision. And it's not an easy road after that. A part of that surrender is after this, we were homeless because I sat for 2 years and I didn't have a job. I watched everything fall apart and I wasn't budgeting. And my husband, he tried to hold it together for as long as he could. But there were things that we had to deal with. And like I said, we didn't have a choice but to leave that house. We were kicked out. And we ended up in a homeless shelter. And it was there, I've talked about it in another video, peace the road after is not easy. Because I thought it sure would be. I thought it sure would be easy. And it wasn't. But when I got there, I met so many amazing people. And I was there and we were, getting our lives back on track, and I was learning how to be around people. I was surrendering all of that to God. And it was not something that I had a choice in. I was thrown into it, and God was there. God was good. He had so much mercy and grace during that time. And I was able to learn how to be a person again. And the head, the CEO president of the shelter came and said, we're going to this church and I'd really like you to speak. And I'm just like, oh, no, I'm not the one. I'm not the one for that. In my heart. And God is saying, you're going to be up on that stage. I'm going to get you up there one way or another. And I'm just like, absolutely not. I told her, no, I don't think anybody wants to hear me. I don't think I'm just not the right person for this. So I told her no. And then, God wouldn't leave me alone. And he kept speaking on my heart. And he's like, you're going to get up there. And I'm like, I'm not getting up there. Do you know me, Lord? Have you seen me? Have you seen this journey that we've been on together? First off, let's just start there. He just wouldn't let it go. So I ended up on that stage, and it was a mess. And I couldn't understand why. I couldn't understand why he wanted me to get up there. And I did it anyways. And, I met a adoptive mom in that crowd, and she came up and told me, and it was just such an amazing, amazing moment. And I feel like looking back now, there were so many times where God tried to tell me, like, not everybody is going to, hate you or think you're a monster. You have to surrender. You have to take these steps, and I will get you there. But you have to rely on me. You have to surrender to me. You have to do the things that I am asking you to do. And I almost feel like getting up there and doing that and looking back, like I said, it was almost a foreshadowing of where I feel like God wants me to go, and I don't want to go there. Oh, it's hard enough being up here, but like I've said before, this is just like I feel like it's getting me ready for something, and it's not anything that I want to do because I barely want to do this. I don't. It's been hard enough to get me to come up here and sit and and with you guys and feel like you guys are staring at me and you guys can't even see me. So I don't know how I got up on that stage. And when y'all know me now, when I say I don't know how, because that was God, that was Him. He told me I was going to be on that stage, and He got me up there. And it's never happened before. And it's never happened since. But I think He wanted me up there for that reason, for a reason, and His timing we'll see. We will see because I feel like I know, and I don't like it. And it's just another one of those situations where do it anyways, just put it down and get up there. And I did. And I've been trying to figure out how to clip that. And I really want to show you guys like that was surrendering in its finest for me. And I don't and how far this goes back to him wanting me to speak. This was about a year after the adoption when I had already been in those groups. I've already very got a good sense of what people were going to think of me and how they're going to perceive my story. And not a lot of people were seeing God through it. Lord, so why you want me to go up there? And I did, and I'm so glad I did because, like I said, I learned from the adoptive mom. She came up, and I had no clue that there would be somebody that understood the situation sitting in the crowd, and just all the comfort that came along with that. And yeah, it was an amazing opportunity after that. And even after that, for a while, it's just like, why did that happen? Why did you call me up on stage like that? Why did you call me? Why are you calling me to speak so much? Um, you know, I feel like my situation is a situation that nobody wants to hear about, and you want me to come like throw it in their faces. Why? And I still ask that, why am I up here doing this? And I know that it's planting seeds. And I know all of this. I know this. It's just I'm very stage fright. And I feel like there are going to be situations that he's asking me to do that. I don't know if I'm going to be strong enough to do that. But I know that with him I am because of everything that we've been through. It's confusing, y'all. It is. When you teeter back and forth with surrendering or not. It is such a what are those teeter totter literally on the playground, the teeter totter. It's some, but that moment you get that levelness and that alignment, you understand fully why he was asking you and what he was asking of you. So what does all of this look like in your life? What does surrendering to him fully look like in your life? What would it look like for you to look up and literally say, Lord, take it all. I'm not moving until you tell me to move. I'm going to sit still. Oh my goodness. I don't want to say his name wrong, but he was in the chat. I screenshotted it because he made such a, I've never, Capped Saliva came in and he made such strong points. And I was going to tell him he should go back and go through my 30-day challenge because that's exactly, he says, sometimes he speaks in that still small voice. And then he went on to say, sometimes God speaks. Oh, I just read that when he goes on to say, there are times when Jesus intentionally sought out isolation. Yes. And that's what I've been saying is in trying to get people to understand. God wants you to cut through every single thing in your life, the noise, the voices in your head, the people around you, everything. And cut through that and focus on his voice, what he has for you. And it's going to go against what the world has to say a lot of the times. And he's asking us to do it anyways. But that's the whole, yeah, I very much in those moments, I've had a lot of silence on my journey throughout this. And like I said, it was like he was turned all the way up. And I think that's exactly where he needed to get me to be. He needed to take all these people away. He needed to get it to, I went from that caterpillar and he put me in that cocoon. And now I'm out. I am that butterfly. And it takes a lot of just being with you and God. And Jesus knew that. And that's such a strong key. Like that whole challenge to this whole page is just cutting through the world, cutting through your feelings, cutting through it all to hear him. And that is just the beginning of the journey. That's where it truly starts. We're all have been on a journey since we were born, but our real journey doesn't start until you lay everything down and you say, I hear what the world's saying. I hear what everybody is saying, but this is what God is saying, and I'm going to follow that. In isolation, for my 30-day challenge, I had this drawing going on for, and I'm still going to do it. I'm going to put it in the wheel. I just have to go find it in storage. I feel like, can I pick a winner before I go get it out of storage? That's all I've been waiting on, is just to go over there and figure out where I put it. But that was the whole thing is I took that challenge and I rewrote it as a gift to give to somebody. And with the little vapor fireplace thing, it was all about creating that silent space that you can go and be with God and listen to what he has for you. Be honest with him. Tell him all your fears, all your doubts in that space. But that is what I wanted to create. So that way that can grow. That voice can get louder. You can get stronger in following it. Everything that you need, your unique relationship with God for happening in that space. And that's what that challenge was hopefully it did for me, to create that space. And that's what I was going to give to the winner of the wheel. Anybody in chat that night that I do the drawing, all you have to do is say, I want on the wheel, and I'll put you on the wheel. And you will be entered into the drawing. And that's what I would love to give you. I would love to give you that to help you create that isolation for you and God, that space. Because yes, Cap Saliva, I loved that. And that's perfect. That's I feel like that's what I'm trying to embody, is that space just for you and God. And yeah, so I appreciate that comment so much. And I appreciate you for coming in. If you ever come back and you listen to this, thanks for stopping over. It was such a much needed comments. I appreciate them. But as we reflect on this message tonight, I want to encourage you with this. Surrendering to God's will is not about loss or rejection of who we are. It's not about giving up or letting go of our worth. It's about stepping into faith towards something better, something eternal. When we lay ourselves down, our plans, our desires, our fears, it's not to diminish us, but to let God's love and purpose shine through us in ways we could never imagine on our own. It is an act of trust, believing that his plans for us are good and that he is faithful to complete the work he has started in us. And it's hard to see those confirmations and to see how faithful that he truly has been. So pray for that. Pray for God to show you his faithfulness through this, and he will. He will bring it forefront. Surrender is not a one-time event. It's a journey. It takes courage to take that first step, faith to keep walking, and grace to carry us through when the road feels hard. But here's the beauty of it. When we let God do his work fully in us, We don't lose ourselves. We start finding ourselves in Him, through Him, for Him. And He deserves all the glory. He truly does. So I want to leave you with these questions. And I really want you to think about them. Whether you're seasoned or first starting out or wondering or wherever you are, because there's always something that He's asking of you. There's always going to be something He is asking you to lay down for Him. Where is God asking you to lay yourself down so He can do His work fully? Where is He asking to break you completely down to build you back up in His image for His glory? Where is He asking you to trust Him completely with everything? Take those questions into your heart tonight, and let's ask God for the strength and faith to follow Him wherever He leads, no matter what that's going to do to us. God will never hurt us. God will never forsake us. God will always be there. And I promise you, if God is in the mix and you are feeling like you are breaking, it's because He needs to build you back up for something so much better. And you are worthy of that. You are worthy of that. So I want to close in a prayer. Gracious God, thank you for meeting us here tonight and for the truth of your word. Thank you for the gentle yet powerful ways you call us to trust you, to surrender, and to step into your perfect will for our lives. Lord, as we leave this time together, we ask for your guidance and strength. Help us to identify the areas in our lives where we're holding on too tightly and give us the faith to release them into your hands, just to let it go. Break us down where we need breaking, not to harm us, but to shape us, to build us back up in your image for your glory. Father, remind us daily that surrender is not a loss, but a gain, a step closer to you and the abundant life you have planned for us. Fill us with your peace, your wisdom, and your courage as we walk forward in trust and obedience. We love you, Lord, and we thank you for loving us first. May our lives be a reflection of your grace, your faithfulness, and your glory. In the mighty name of Jesus, amen. Oh, amen. I appreciate you guys for sitting with me as I redid this. And I hope that, you come to understand not just who I am and what I went through, but who God is and what He did and what He can do for you. And as you leave out of here tonight, I want you to look back on this and ask yourself, what does surrender look like for you? What is God asking you to do? And I will see you when I see you.